My wife filed for divorce because her friends like being with rich men and she wants to try that life. But now that she's looking to come back, I told her that we don't need her around with the kids. About 7 months ago, Emma, my ex-wife, 42, and I, 44, moved because of her new job. She'd been offered a high-level position at a company she applied to without my knowledge. The reason she did it was that she knew I'd never agree to move. We'd been together for 12 years, married for 10, and we have 8-year-old twins. Both of our families live here, and a few years ago, my father was diagnosed with leukemia. Since then, our family's been struggling because his health has been poor, and we're always on edge, fearing we might lose him. Naturally, as his only son, I want to be here for him, and for my mom, too. So I couldn't bring myself to move. After my father's diagnosis, I thought Emma would understand what was going on, but instead, she told me I was being too sensitive. She said I couldn't keep turning down job opportunities out of state and expect her to do the same just because my father was sick. In fact, before he got sick, we'd actually been planning to move because she wanted a change of pace. But after the diagnosis, I told her it wasn't possible for me anymore. At first, she tried to understand, but gradually, over the past year or so, she started feeling restless, and we ended up fighting a lot about it. She wanted to move because she felt stuck here, while I couldn't imagine leaving my dad in such a condition, especially since it would also mean leaving my mom to handle everything on her own. Even if I had siblings, I couldn't have left because my conscience wouldn't have allowed it. I tried explaining that to Emma, but she wouldn't see my point of view. She thought I was selfish, and in her eyes, I was the one being selfish. Then, earlier this year, one day she came home from work and told me she'd applied for a well-paying job out of state, and she got it. That took me by surprise. I wanted to be happy for her, but I just couldn't because she hadn't mentioned anything about the application or the job beforehand. I was in shock, so I just congratulated her and said nothing else that day. I remember we later got into an argument because she felt I wasn't happy enough for her success, even though it was a huge deal. I mean, it was a good job with a decent salary. What really bothered me was that she never even thought to talk to me about it before applying. She admitted she didn't think she'd actually get the job, but now that she did, she was planning to move, and she wanted me to come with her. She wanted to relocate our whole family, fully aware of how I felt about moving. We ended up fighting over it, and it was one of our worst fights ever. It got so bad that she ended up staying with her parents for a couple of days, and we had no contact during that time. I even thought she'd file for divorce and end our marriage for good. But then she came back, and we decided we'd try to work things out, for the kids' sake. At that point, I still believed our marriage could work because I didn't want to give up on us. I was sure I loved her, and she told me she loved me too, so she wanted it to work. But she also didn't want to give up on her dreams. After many arguments, we agreed that she'd take the job while I'd stay behind. She promised to travel back and forth as much as she could so we could make it work. We had no choice but to try a long-distance marriage for now, since neither of us was ready to let go. I struggled to accept it, but I had to, for the time being, until we could figure out our future. So, she left and started coming home every other weekend. Even then, she could only spend 2 days with us, catching a flight back on Sunday afternoons because she had to be at work on Monday. I knew it was exhausting for her, but there was nothing I could do since she'd agreed to the arrangement. Over time, I suppose she started resenting me, and her attitude toward me only worsened. We promised each other we'd make this work, but every time I tried to call her during the week, she was always so cruel and we'd end up arguing. Eventually, it felt like she didn't even want to talk to me. I started waiting for her to call first, and then we spoke less and less. Even when we did talk, it was always cold and awkward. I didn't know what to think. Finally, after nearly 4 months apart, one weekend she came home with divorce papers. Things were really tense between us at that point. She told me she couldn't take it anymore when she returned that weekend. We hadn't spoken for almost 6 days straight after our last big fight, when she actually brought up the idea of ending our marriage for good. I should have seen it coming for months. Not only had we been fighting, but she'd also grown close to a high school friend. This friend, let's call her Melissa, was not a good influence at all. Emma had always been close with Melissa. She was even a bridesmaid at our wedding. But I never liked her because she always gave off a weird vibe. From what I knew, Melissa was a total gold digger who chased rich, married men so she wouldn't have to commit but could still reap the benefits. She'd even brag about it, as if it weren't already despicable enough. Whenever I mentioned Melissa's behavior, Emma would say it was her personal choice and that I shouldn't judge her. That was so irritating that eventually I stopped talking about Melissa and decided to ignore that friendship entirely. It got a little easier when Melissa moved away and Emma got busy with work and the kids, so they drifted apart a bit. I knew Melissa had also been living in the same state with her son for a couple of years after her second divorce, probably looking for new conquests. Coincidentally, when Emma got a job in that state, she reconnected with Melissa, who introduced her to the city and helped her move. I hoped Melissa had mellowed out over the years, but she was still the same odd person. I wasn't comfortable with Emma being that close to Melissa again, but she was Emma's only friend there, so I couldn't say much about it. In the months Emma had been away, she told me that Melissa had been very supportive since Emma was alone, and even introduced her to a couple of her own friends. This group was pretty strange. A bunch of 3 or 4 single moms who met on Facebook and formed some kind of support group. According to Emma, these women had been with men, had children, and for various reasons, their partners abandoned them, leaving them with only child support. It wasn't as tragic as it sounds, because most of these women were like Melissa. They chased rich men, had affairs, got pregnant, and when the men chose to stay with their families, these women managed to get a hefty amount of child support to maintain their lifestyle. In reality, it wasn't just financial support. It was like a bribe to keep quiet, since those men didn't want their affairs to be exposed. It was common for all of them to run some online business that no one really cared about. They claimed to be self-employed and independent, but they were basically running a scam. Emma found it amusing, but I found it disgusting, and I didn't think it was a good idea for her to hang out with them. Still, she defended her friends, saying she'd met them in person and that they were really nice. Since we were already fighting about so many things, I didn't want to start another argument, so I stayed quiet. But during our last fight before she filed for divorce, she told me she really admired Melissa's strength, how she was raising her 2 kids brilliantly on her own, without any help. I ended the call snippily and told her that anyone who makes a living by getting pregnant after an affair with a rich man is probably only looking after a lottery ticket, not the kids. That sparked a huge fight. The frustration that had been building up for months finally exploded that day. We started cursing at each other, telling each other exactly how much we hated the situation, and we blamed one another completely. At one point, she said that if we were going to fight like this forever, it was best for each of us to go our separate ways, and then she hung up. I thought she wasn't serious and would call back to apologize, but she never did. I was so angry with her that I didn't even reach out. That weekend, she showed up with the divorce papers, and I decided to move forward because I couldn't find any reason to stay with her. We had tried to make it work, but we just couldn't. Even the kids, whom we were supposed to be together for, rarely saw us together, and when we did, we weren't happy. So rather than let them grow up in a toxic environment, we decided to divorce. The divorce process was relatively simple since our state has no waiting period, and we only had to split our joint assets, which went pretty smoothly. I kept the house and the kids since she didn't want to take them at that moment, and she agreed that for now she'd come by every week to see them. We had been sharing the cost of raising them anyway, so that continued. Once they were a bit older, we'd let them decide what they wanted to do. It wasn't ideal for either of us, but we didn't want to fight over custody because we believed our kids deserved both of us. As for the house, We had a verbal agreement that we'd sell it in a few years and split the proceeds. The divorce was finalized about a month ago, and I didn't expect her to even want to talk to me afterward. Even during the divorce process, we barely spoke outside of meetings with our lawyers. Now that everything is settled, I'm just trying to cope. Although nothing seems to have changed since we're still stuck in the same routine, life is definitely going to be very different for me now that I'm no longer married to Emma. My kids are also very confused about what's happening, so I had to explain that their mom and I are no longer together. Then, last night, she called me again to try to work things out and give our relationship another shot. Apparently, she realized she'd made a huge mistake and wanted to undo the divorce. I could tell she'd been crying and was pretty hysterical on the phone. She started ranting about how she'd unintentionally idealized the lifestyle that Melissa and her friends live. Because of that group, she hadn't mentioned anything before. I know how I feel about Melissa. But after our last fight, she talked with her group of friends, and they told her to go through with the divorce. At first she was skeptical, but they convinced her. Then she even talked to a lawyer who was recommended to her. It's been a month since then, and she's literally tried everything to move on. Dating apps, blind dates, going out almost every night. But she's only ended up having one-night stands. This has made her feel pathetic because, at least when we were fighting, she knew we still loved each other. Now she's really alone and, more than anything, she misses the kids. Her friends told her that this would pass, but she hasn't been able to shake the loneliness and guilt after the divorce. Also, her company was doing really well when she joined, but she's had several pay cuts since then. Apparently, they exaggerated how good things would be to lure her in, and her current salary doesn't match what was initially promised. And she's not the only one. Everyone in the company is going through the same thing. They keep telling people that things will get better if they work hard, but she believes it's just to keep employees from leaving. That's another reason why she wants to come back to me. She said she really wants me to consider undoing the divorce because she just misses her family and what used to be her life. But after she finished explaining everything to me, I got furious because I couldn't believe she'd let her immoral friends convince her to get a divorce. I'd always warned her about Melissa and made it clear I didn't like the company she kept after moving, but she never listened, and now they turned out to be the reason she made that decision. If it had been solely her mistake, I might have been understanding, but the fact that she chose to listen to people I despise really pissed me off. The nerve of calling me and starting to cry about it all, as if it were all so easy for me, it just made me furious. I ended up exploding on her and told her that if she really felt alone and guilty, she should ask her friends for help. I'm sure if they were the ones who pushed her into getting a divorce, they'd care enough to help her financially and emotionally. I was also really upset that she basically admitted she'd been having one-night stands with random people over the past month since our divorce. Technically, she's single and can do whatever she wants, but it made me feel incredibly uncomfortable and depressed, because it felt like she had devalued everything we'd shared over the last 12 years. So I told her I didn't want her back in my life, especially after everything she just said, and that I'd make sure the kids stayed with me because I wasn't sure she was a good influence on them. She started crying even harder and told me she'd do whatever it took to fix things. But I told her she'd made her decision and had to live with it, that the kids and I didn't need her anymore. Then I hung up and blocked her. When I woke up this morning, I had several messages from my ex-in-laws. They were telling me I shouldn't have said those things because she was already really depressed, and that it wasn't nice of me to kick her when she was down. They said it wasn't necessary since she was already regretting everything she'd done, and it seemed like I was just punishing her further by saying the kids and I didn't need her. I wouldn't have cared what my ex-in-laws said, but they've been very kind to me since the divorce. So, I don't know. Am I really the bad guy for telling my ex-wife that I don't want her back, and that the kids and I don't need her anymore? Update 1. Thank you so much for all the support you've shown in the comments. I don't know how to express it, but it really means a lot to me to know that so many people are on my side in this situation. It means even more that so many of you have identified with my story and reached out to tell me that things will get better. That's incredibly kind of you, and I truly believe things will improve. It's been 4 days since I posted, and I blocked Emma after our conversation, so she hasn't been able to contact me. This weekend, she's supposed to come see the kids and spend some time with them, so I'm not sure what will happen then. Over the past few months since the divorce process started, she would only pick up the kids from my house and then head to her parents' place to spend the weekend with them, occasionally coming over for some family activities with the 4 of us. But for the most part, she tried to keep her distance from me, and I was okay with that because it just made things easier for me. This weekend, however, is uncertain. Honestly, I'm a little worried about having to see her because her parents have been very upset with me. They told me that what I said was so harsh that she's been crying every time they called her since then. I haven't responded to any of their messages because I really don't know what to say. I do feel a bit bad because I know Emma isn't usually very emotional, yet I managed to hit a nerve since she's been crying so much. Even though she hasn't been exactly kind to me and our circumstances haven't been great, I still feel really sad for her because we could have had a great life together. I feel like she ruined it all herself. I did my best to make things work, but it's not like I could keep our marriage going on my own without any help from her. Honestly, I don't know what to say. Update 2. Emma came by yesterday to pick up the kids, and we ended up having a conversation about everything that's been said. It was obvious from her appearance that she was going through a really rough time, something you could see on her face, and it was incredibly hard for me to be cold with her. She asked if I'd be willing to talk, even just a little bit, and I eventually agreed. Once the kids were in her room, we started talking. She told me she was truly sorry for everything, not just for the recent months but for the past few years as well. She admitted it had taken her a long time to realize just how selfish she'd been, and she even said she didn't deserve to be with me. She explained that in the past few weeks after the divorce, whenever she went on a date or met with a man, all she could think about was how uncertain she was about whether that was really the life she wanted for herself. She felt guilty for throwing everything away. She'd built up this idealized notion, but it wasn't nearly as amazing as she thought it would be. By the time she realized that, it was too late. I'd already lost her. As she spoke, she started crying again. I tried to comfort her, but she told me that would only make her feel worse because it would remind her of what a terrible person I am and how badly I'd treated her. It was a bittersweet moment hearing her say those things about me, because I would have appreciated that honesty when we were together, but now I'm not sure what to do with it. Anyway, after a while, she told me that she had decided to quit her job and move back here to be closer to her family. She also said she wanted to spend more time with the kids since she'd missed so much of it. She realized it wasn't worth staying away for so little money and sacrificing so much. The only request she had for me was not to file for full custody, like she'd hinted I might. I told her not to worry. I'd said that in the heat of the moment, and I had no intention of doing it anyway, because both she and I have always taken good care of our kids. I knew they missed their mom, so spending more time with her would definitely be good for them, and I supported that. After we finished talking, she apologized once again and told me I was a good man. She also promised she'd try to be a better mother and a better person, and she thanked me for letting her talk to me after everything that had happened instead of just slamming the door in her face. That touched me a little, but I didn't say anything more, and then she left with the kids. That's it. I didn't expect things to turn out this way. I thought she'd come and fight with me, but it ended up being pleasant and unexpected. She apologized, and while I can't say I forgive her or that it's all in the past, at least we're on the right track now. I don't think I can ever fully go back to her. That seems unrealistic after everything that's happened. But the least we can do is try to raise our kids in the best, most peaceful environment possible. And of course, that's better for both of us. Now, let's see what the future holds. Update 3. Well, it's been 4 months since my divorce, and after my last update, Emma kept her word. A few weeks ago, She left her job and moved back here. Since then, our kids have been splitting their time between both of us. They spend half the week at my place and the other half with their mom, and so far it's been working pretty well for them. Emma initially stayed with her parents, but she found an apartment just a few blocks away. Now the kids are enjoying life with 2 homes. As for my ex-in-laws, things are back to normal. We don't talk regularly, but they apologized for bothering me during Emma's crisis. They told me it wasn't my fault, but as parents, they were really stressed out and ended up taking it out on me reflexively. Emma and I are also on good terms again. I wouldn't say we're friends, but we're cordial, and things have stayed civil. I'm slowly moving on, too, trying to process everything that's happened. So far, things are looking up, and I'm hopeful that it will only continue to get better. Update 4. It's been almost 7 months since my divorce, and I wanted to share a significant update. A couple of months ago, I met someone, and we've started dating. She's a single mom, and her kids are around the same age as mine, which I think could be a really good thing. It's been nice to be with someone again, and I feel good about this relationship. As for my kids, I think they'll be incredibly understanding. They've often told me that it would be okay if I started dating someone, that I didn't have to be alone. Because of that, I've been seriously considering introducing them to my new girlfriend. I believe they'll handle it well, and it'll be a positive transition for everyone. They might even get along with my girlfriend's kids. However, this update isn't just about that. It's also about something that happened with Emma. A few days ago, when Emma came to pick up the kids, she asked if we could sit down and talk. I assumed she wanted to discuss something about the kids, so I agreed. We sat in the living room while the kids were upstairs finishing packing their things. To my surprise, Emma told me that it had been a long time since our divorce, and now that we were getting along well, she wanted to go on a date and see how things would go. She explained that since she moved back to town, she hadn't dated anyone and hadn't been in touch with Melissa or her other friends. For her, this would be a chance to see how she felt and whether we could rekindle what we had. It was a little awkward, given what I mentioned earlier, and I wasn't sure how to say it. But in the end, I told her that I had already met someone and was even considering introducing her to our kids. Even though we were in a better place and got along well, I didn't think getting back together was a good idea. Emma took it well and thanked me for being honest with her, but I could tell she felt a little hurt. The truth is, even if I hadn't met someone, I still believe giving our relationship another shot would be a bad idea. Update 5. I wanted to give a small update on how things are going. First, regarding my dad, since many people have been asking, he's still battling his health issues, but I'm relieved to say he's improving little by little. It's been a long and complicated process, but he's a fighter, and his progress has given all of us a bit of hope. As for my personal life, I recently introduced my kids to my new girlfriend. I was a little nervous at first, but I'm really happy to say they received her well. They seem to get along with her, and that's been a huge relief for me. Knowing my kids are comfortable and happy with this new dynamic gives me a lot of peace of mind. Also, I recently had the chance to meet my girlfriend's kids. We decided to have a barbecue at my place so everyone could spend time together in a relaxed environment. It was an amazing day. The kids got along really well, playing and laughing as if they'd known each other forever. I'm really happy with how things are moving forward, both in my personal life and with my dad's health. I truly appreciate all the support and well wishes from everyone.